be or not to be? That is the question.
Science and technology have advanced in a dramatic fashion in the last 250 years. But it's difficult to argue that the same is true of social services. Part of the problem that's limited our progress is that our existing theories of measurement remain grounded in logical positivism, a philosophy of science that was first proposed in the 1800s. That's a bad idea. Although we sometimes forget, all science is based on philosophy. It's a belief system about how we accrue knowledge. The field is called philosophy of science. The philosophy known as logical positivism, sometimes called British empiricism, has its intellectual roots in the renowned philosopher David Hume, a contemporary of Francis Galton who first proposed psychometrics. Logical positivists believe that there is an absolute truth and that the way to determine that truth is to use multiple probes that you can combine to fully describe a phenomena even when you cannot see it. This is why we as social scientists oftentimes create questionnaires that ask multiple questions, and then we administer the questionnaire by always asking it with exactly the same language in exactly the same order. And the logical positivist believes that when you combine those multiple questions together, it will in fact reveal a truth. This is simply not true. Anyone who works in a clinical setting knows that getting at a truth is a much more complicated journey. Since the rise of logical positivism, two other primary movements in philosophy of science are noteworthy. Social constructionism became somewhat popular and controversial in the early 1960s with the publication of Thomas Kuhn's classic, The Structure of Scientific Revolution. The basic concept of this philosophy is that there is no truth, and that reality is a consensus based on a moment in time with people agreeing on what reality is. We see the ultimate expression of social constructionism in our current political environment among politicians who appear to believe that if they say something loud and proud and often enough, it will become accepted as a truth. However, social constructionism is essentially nihilistic and therefore not sustainable in the long run. The field of philosophy of science fairly quickly realized that and has moved on. The second noteworthy movement are the so-called reality philosophies, which seek to balance between the extremes of positivism and constructionism. Larry Loudon's native naturalism, for example, proposes that there is an absolute truth, but that humans can seldom, if ever, observe it because of all manner of contextual factors. It's the job of science to work through these contextual factors and do the best we can to approximate a truth. In the helping sector, we have to act based on what we believe we know. However, we must accept that what we think we know may not actually be an absolute truth. Communometric measures, and therefore TCOM methods, are based on the reality philosophy of science. They are measures of a person's story and do not pretend to be revelations of an absolute truth. They are simply our best guess of what that truth may be based on what we know at this given time. Philosophy of science is a perpetually evolving field. The philosophy that researchers choose to base their science upon matters.